And welcome to another Mark Bishop show. You know, according to the 21st Annual Technology Vision Report from Accenture, the Technology Vision 2021, which is based on a survey of more than 6,200 business executives, technology was a lifeline during the global pandemic. This is enabling new ways of working and doing business, creating new interactions and experiences, and improving health and safety. So I thought it'd be great to have the managing director of Accenture in the technology vision. This is a wonderful area. We're talking about Michael Biltz. He is the managing director, and I'd love to welcome him to the show. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, mate, technology, it's forever changed expectations and behaviors. I mean, it's created entirely new realities across every industry. What say you?
No, I think it is. But what's interesting about this year is it's less about how technology is changing us and rather how much the world is changing, and we're using technology almost to stabilize our lives. So there's been a real flip of script over the last year, as we've been looking at COVID as the disruptor, and then technology has really been, I'm going to say our lifeline, from villain to hero, in terms of trying to keep our jobs, trying to keep us healthy, keep us safe.
Well, I guess as companies shift from, reacting to the crisis to reinventing what comes next, the boldest, most visionary leaders, those who use technology to master change, I guess they're going to define the future, won't they?
No, I think they are, and that's a weird position, I think, for most companies to be in, is that, like, if you almost close your eyes and if you can imagine yourself back, pre-COVID, is we all thought we had a pretty good idea as to where things were going, and whether you're talking about, electric vehicles or you're talking about, personalization, is that all of those things seem to have a pretty direct line. But, suddenly, insert, basically a global tragedy that nobody expected. And now I think we're talking about little bits of the unknown. Let me give you an example. Is that, one of the things that, we've seen happen is that, the trust in mass transit has, basically, dropped really, really low. Part of it's a health and safety, part of it is just a habit, part of it's we're now working from home. And so there's that interesting question that says, well, one, I think there's a 65% drop in ridership within the US. The question is, one, is it going to survive? And then two, if it does survive, is it still trains and subways, and buses? Or, are we going to be looking to technology that says it's going to be automated cars and Ubers and whatnot, that's going to replace it? And we thought we knew the answer a year ago as we're all investing heavily in more and more mass transit. And I think now we're going to start asking some real questions for companies like the Fords and GMs of the world to say, what exactly does our future look like? Because, weirdly enough, when you ask people, they don't know yet either. And so, we really are looking to companies to figure out what that next wave is.
Well, when I was a kid, mate, I used to watch a TV series called The Jetsons. You're probably too young for that. But we're nearly there.
No, I remember the Jetsons.
Oh, it's scary. Flying through the air with cars and what have you. But I mean, Arizona at the moment, I think we've got something like, I think there's 2,400, driverless cars on the road. There's trucks being tested, of course, and set up. And I think in the States, isn't there something like, I know there's China, there's 400 companies manufacturing driverless cars, and that's just China. So, I mean...
No, I mean, and it's all farther than we think. Because we keep thinking about it in terms of when am I going to get mine? But the reality is that you go onto like a mining site and, those giant pieces of equipment, they're not, being driven by people. They're all driverless. You look at, big pieces of farming equipment and tractors, is that they're doing the same thing. So we're a lot closer to some of these things than we think. We just don't know how some of these things are really going to play out.
No. Well, this particular report now, the Vision Report, a survey of more than 6,200 business execs, and technology being a lifeline. Let's talk about the report. Leaders Wanted, Masters of Change at a Moment of Truth, outlines how leading enterprises are compressing a decade of digital transformation into just 1 or 2 years now.
No, I think that's right. Is that, what we saw is that, COVID was weirdly a stress test for all of our businesses. Is that, we keep talking about putting, more of our stuff in the cloud, and businesses keep talking about being more analytic and more resilient, and, all of those good terms that we're investing in. And COVID shone a really bright light on the things that worked and the things that didn't. And I think in some respects we just weren't as far along as we thought we were. We came back with a number that said 94% of companies said that their supply chains were interrupted because of COVID, and 74 said that they were drastically interrupted. And so there was an amount of, we thought we were flexible enough to handle anything, and we weren't. And then the other side of it turned into, we're now starting to see a bigger and bigger gap between the people who are far along and the people who weren't. So let me explain that in a little more detail.
Yeah, please do.
Prior to COVID, companies that were investing heavily in digital were growing their revenue at a rate that was 2x those that weren't. Now that we're seeing in COVID, that 2x has gone to 5x. And so there's an amount that says that when you think about digital technology, one of the big pieces that it's pushing is the ability for you to rapidly change. And prior to COVID, that was important because you always want to get ahead. But now that we're really seeing, we're seeing, us going from a boom time to economic questions. We're seeing people losing their jobs. We're seeing preferences on, am I buying stuff in person? Am I doing things in mobile? All of the change that we're seeing going around suddenly becoming a much higher priority on every company's agenda. And so the companies that are able to move fast and move quickly are getting farther and farther ahead, and it's creating this new digital gap that we're predicting.
Well, according to some more of your research, business leaders, they're relying on a strong digital core to adapt and innovate at lightning speed. But the leaders are growing revenues, as you say, 5 and 10 times faster than laggards today versus only 2 times faster, back in 2015, 2018, according to your, Accenture research. But here's what gets me. I'm not going to mention the bank, but I was on the phone an hour the other day trying to get through to fix a problem with my business account. Now, I know the COVID has hurt and all this jazz, but I tell you what, in this day and age with digital and God knows what, surely not having to press 9, digital things on the phone and still not get through and then wait an hour in today's modern world. I mean, I don't get that at all,
No, and I think that's just it, we've been talking about some of these simple solutions like the one that you just talked about, for years. And we've been very slowly and methodically investing to do this, but frankly, it just hasn't happened that fast. And I think that's the real big difference that we have here is that it's no longer just a roadmap and a plan about how people are going to do things. Is that when we're talking to companies, is that staying still and doing nothing is no longer an option. Like there's enough turmoil out there. There's enough problems with their existing business. Their consumers have changed enough that suddenly just staying in that safe home place where you're still making money but being really efficient at it, it's no longer enough. And so what we thought was going to take another decade for us to do, and a lot of times it's the simple things. It's how do you automate some of these systems? How do we make your user experience a little bit easier? How do you get things up on the cloud and make it more resilient? Is that those are things that we're seeing a huge ramp up in investment, and we're really predicting that things that we thought were going to take a decade, are realistically going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
It's amazing. Folks, I'm speaking with Michael Biltz. He's Managing Director of the Accenture Technology Vision. And this is Vision 21, 2021, which is based on a survey of more than 6,200 business executives. And, you can follow this, get online yourself, have a read. There's a lot on the site, www.accenture.com/technology vision. And each year, this technology vision report, it identifies the top technology trends that businesses need to heed in order to thrive. What were some of the main insights from the latest report, Michael, that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think that one of the ones that stood out to me is the fact that we're not going to stop working from home. Is that I think that there's a notion for a lot of people that we're just waiting for vaccines and then suddenly everybody's going to go back to work again, in a office, pre-COVID. And it's just not what we're seeing, both in terms of, companies like Fujitsu, announcing that all 80,000 people will have a option to either work from home, work from the office, or do some sort of hybrid halfway in between, to the surveys that we've been pushing out that basically are coming back and telling us that 48% of people believe that they're either going to be working from home full time or at least part time once COVID is gone. And this is a pretty big shift, and let me give you the magnitude is that the last time we've seen a shift this big was in World War I and World War II when women entered the workforce.
Right.
Is that this is a huge thing. I mean, we're talking about changing the way that we act and interact with each other. That says everything from, I'm home all the time to what I'm expected to do, how we raise our kids, to education potentially being something that happens, remotely, more often, to questions about whether populations and city centers are still going to be the center of where everybody goes or whether we can work from anywhere, anytime. Is that we're really talking about a ripple effect that says if half of our workforce can really work anywhere they want, we're going to start to see, ripples that are going to last for, decades.
Yeah, well, clearly the pandemic has been a major factor, in this year's report. How did COVID-19, not to mention other global events from the past year, but how much did COVID-19 shape your findings?
I mean, I think it almost single-handedly changed most of what we wanted to focus on. Because it's one of those interesting things that says it's not that everybody changed what they were going to do. It's rather on one hand, everything got done at an accelerated pace that says, for example, we've been looking at remote work for many years, and there's more and more that's being done. Now, that being said, is that because of COVID, companies like the National Healthcare in England, is that they onboarded 1.2 million people to enable them to work remotely and do remote office visits, so healthcare related, in a matter of 3 weeks. That was something that was likely going to take a decade or more, with lots of arguing in between as to whether or not they should be doing it when it was effective. And it just happens, and then the other side of it, really turns into us realizing that the set future that we thought it was going to be, as soon as we accelerate up, that says, oh my gosh, we're going to be doing remote working and it's going to be mobile pay. And suddenly even our parents and grandparents are going to be ordering things, online and not going to the store. All of those things, we've talked about them before, but now the question is, well, if those have happened and are happening, what's next? And it's that interesting white space that I think we're all surprised, that we're suddenly having to ask hard questions because, we used to just push them off because if it was more than 5 years in the future, nobody thought we'd be particularly accurate, so we didn't have to worry about it. And I think suddenly everybody's thinking, now it's time for us to formulate new plans. Now's the time, for a GM to come back and say, if I had an opportunity to take over mass transit, what would I do? Whereas they would never have even bothered to ask something like that, even as a speculatory question 18 months ago.
Moving forward, there are new realities that leaders and businesses, they'll need to tackle head on. a lot of different areas. You've touched on this, but what are these new dynamics, do you think, and how are companies addressing them? The working from home jazz, does that simply mean something like, wow, companies now won't have to pay holiday pay, they won't have to pay holidays, sickness benefits? I mean, do you see this writing on the wall or what?
I mean, I think it's weirdly enough, is that I think what's going to happen around especially from the working from home piece, is that all the things that we've taken for granted, I think we're actually going to start to digitize. And it's a weird thing, even for me to say, but when you think about how your productivity at work works, is that who who you're chatting with, your network, who you're having lunch with, the collaboration sessions, the things that you hear, getting excited, engaged because the people around you are using your work or you're able to help somebody. I mean, these are all part and parcel for how you're working. And when you start talking about remote work, we've gotten part of it right. We've gotten the remote worker part that says I can connect and I can share information. And if there's not a physical reason why I have to be there, I don't have to do it. But the things that we haven't gotten yet is it says that remote worker is actually an isolated worker. They're not talking to people. They're not having the social conversations. They're having meetings only when there are specific things to cover. How you engage your team, how you excite people, how you create and engender loyalty. I mean, all of these things that go into it, is that all those soft skills have suddenly been lost. And I think we're going to see, a couple of things happen. Is that one, we're going to see people start to digitize and create new ways to do those things online. And then the other thing that I think is going to be fascinating is that when we do go back into the office, and I think a lot of people aren't going to be doing it full time, is that I think the nature of office work is going to change. It's not going to be about getting work done. You get work done at home. I think when you go to the office, you're going to the office to do all the soft skills, to collaborate, to socialize, to brainstorm. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it won't be the 8-hour day or the 9-hour day or the 7-hour day, will it? It's going to be, I see that you sort of do your thing as long as you get your job done, As long as you get what's expected of you done, then you can collaborate together with other workers and so on, and decide, I guess, what the next trip is going to be, But it's very different. And I mean, for companies that may be facing a significant digital achievement gap, in the wake of the pandemic, what trend, or two for that matter, do you view as most critical, to focus on?
I mean, I think the most critical one is honestly it's the simple one, which is what we're calling stack strategically, But this is the idea that says you can't separate your strategy from your technology anymore. So GM, for example, announced a number of weeks back that it was going to invest $27 billion to make their fleet fully electric by 2026. Oof. And you ask the question that says, so is that a strategic decision or is that a technology decision? And the answer is there's no difference anymore. Right. And so there's this weird piece to it that says, okay, so I understand why investing into electric vehicles, and I understand the strategy that you're trying to play, but what you also may not as easily recognize is that by choosing those technology investments is that you're also cutting off other avenues. That says all right, so if you're really pushing to make your whole fleet, electric, does that mean that you're not going to be putting efforts into things like synthetic fuels?
Yeah, right.
And and Porsche is doing exactly the opposite, is that they're basically doubling down that says, well, we want to keep combustion engines because we think there are lots of reasons, and we also get to keep our existing fleet, and we like the way it sounds and the performance, off of that. And so they're pushing all of their investments into these synthetic fuels because they think they get the end-to-end greenhouse gases off of those to be at or below, what we're currently doing through electric vehicles. And so the goal might be the same, but suddenly how you attack a problem, the strategy you do is going to be fundamentally dependent on the technology that I have behind you. And as we're all digitizing ourselves up, suddenly that's going to be every company making those decisions. And particularly as everybody is trying to act and react quickly right now, in the COVID changing world, is that you have to realize that your decisions are going to both enable you to reach out and chase after your dreams, but they're also going to be the ones that are going to limit you, to the other strategies and the other paths you could have taken.
Mm. Well, folks, Michael Biltz, he leads Accenture's technology vision, the rollout and development group, and the company's annual technology visioning process. And through Accenture's technology vision, Michael, you really define, don't you, Accenture's perspective on the future of technology. This is beyond the current conversations that you hear, like social, cloud, mobility, and big data, to focus on how technology will impact the way we work and live. It's beyond that. I mean, you're like a futurist in some ways, you know that? You can affect the stock market,
it's what I try to do. I don't know if I can affect the stock market. I'm just trying to get people to be prepared to understand that the decisions that we're making nowadays are big enough that companies, people, individuals, is that we really are shaping the world. But we're going to get the world that we deserve. And so if we're really thoughtful and think about how we do this, responsibly, we think about how we do this for the betterment of our planet and ourselves, I think we're going to be happy at the end. And if we don't, then we're going to get what we deserve.
That's it. We're dead and gone. But my children and their grandchildren and their children, do you think, with what you know and what you see and being in the world that you're in, do you think they're going to solve the problem for the planet, sincerely? Because let's face it, greed takes over everything. And, there's going to have to be some major changes. We're running out of years, aren't we?
We are running out of years. The good news is that when you look at the actual changes and things that people have in terms of the planet, is that there really are lots of options. Now, the best option would be to, I'm going to say, not put, greenhouse gases out there, but I think that there are a lot more options than people think in terms of, how we pull it back. Mm-hmm. The question is, how fast do we do it and how extreme a measure do we have to, take, but I'm actually more optimistic, than I think most. And the reason that I say that is, 5 years ago and probably even 3 years ago, when you were talking at the C-level at most of these big companies, is this wasn't a topic. I mean, it was something that, maybe it's in the brochures, maybe it's things they're doing, but looking at anything beyond the bottom line wasn't something that was really a important priority for most companies. And right. I think nowadays it's hard to sit down and not talk about jobs in the workforce. It's hard not to talk about sustainability and the planet. And I'm not saying that we're there yet and that everything isn't, there's some lip service still going on to it, but the reality is the people are starting to choose how they spend their money based off of their values more and more. And I think that as we continue to do that, we're going to see companies follow suit and start making bigger investments in things that are going to be, not just good for individuals, but rather good for our society.
Amazing. Is there a lot of stuff on the site, Michael, that my listeners can go to and, learn about, catch up about? This is on Accenture.com.
Absolutely. Accenture.com/technology vision, and there is a full report, an executive summary, videos, tweets, and probably more information you ever wanted to know.
Fabulous. Well, it's always great to talk with you. You're a good speaker, and you know your stuff. I'll give you that. You're a genius at what you do. Michael Biltz, ladies and gentlemen, Managing Director of the Accenture Technology Vision. I hope to speak with you again soon, Michael.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. I hope you enjoyed that on the Mark Bishop Show, and we'll be back soon.